Looky what I got here. You say, it's a big stick. Yeah, but I think it's the oldest fence post on my entire farm. And I'll tell you how I think it got to be that old on this edition of the Farmhand's Companion. Hey everybody, Paul Mack here. You know, I was out in the woods last week. I'm working on a project. It's going to be building a new shed for my sawmill coming up soon. And I was skidding up some cedars that I had felled, a few weeks earlier. And I looked around behind me, and I'm out in the woods, mind you. I looked around behind me, and there's this, I thought it was a dead tree, rotten tree about that tall, sticking out of the ground, and I went to examine it a little closer. Come to find out, it was a fence post. That thing's probably been there 70 or 80 years. I mean, back when it used to be a pasture, there was a barbed wire fence. I'd noticed it earlier, barbed wire, strands of barbed wire laying on the ground, didn't think much of it. And when I saw the tree there, I thought it was a tree. It's where the barbed wire had been running to, and I thought, that is a fence post. So I went over to examine it a little closer, and it was still somewhat firm, could have still been holding barbed wire, and I pulled it up. In fact, let me show you. This is it. Perhaps the oldest fence post on my entire farm. And here it is right here. I noticed it looks like it's obviously a cedar post. I could tell it's cedar wood. You can see, the grains here. All the sapwood has completely rotted off over the years. But I want you to notice, too, this was the bottom that was still in the ground. And so I asked myself, as I ask you, what caused this fence post to survive for so long upright? What did they do 70, 80, who knows how long ago? What did they do all those years ago to ensure that this fence post survived upright for as long as it did? Because what they did can be very useful to you and me as small farmers and homesteaders when we go to put up fencing, to set posts, or to set poles for building a pole barn. So let's examine this thing. I've got it upside down right now. You can notice there's a nail right there. Who knows what that nail was for? So the first thing we want to talk about are the species of tree that are useful for actually ground contact purposes. In fact, what types of trees can you use for fence post or for pole barn structures, for the poles? Well, this one is eastern red cedar. That's what we have a lot of around here. But that is a very useful tree for pole barns or for fence posts. For one thing, as we said, it's a ground contact. It's resistant to rot. It's resistant to insect damage. Insects hate the core. But the eastern red cedar is also, it grows very straight most of the time. There are exceptions. Sometimes it'll even fork off, which is not really useful, but it does grow straight, which makes it a great candidate for fence posts, a great candidate especially for pole barn poles. And also it's extremely easy to put a wedge in and split a cedar tree. And if you've got a big cedar tree with a lot of heartwood, you can half it, split it, and then quarter it, and then if it's big enough, you can just keep on splitting the quarters and get 8 pieces. There was a cedar tree that I used for rail fence, and I demonstrated on the show how I split it up. And I can't even remember how many fence posts I got on it. It was an incredible number, like 19. I can't remember. Cedar is just so easy to split. Other species that make good fence posts around here would be the post oak. That's why they call it a post oak. But you just got to make sure that you use the heartwood. It has to be a big enough tree that you can use the heartwood for the fence post, because that's the part that has a lot of rot resistance. Also, black locust, very, very good tree. There's a lot more of those further east you go. East Tennessee, the Smokies over in there. There's a few black locust around here. That's also a nice tree to split. Makes great split rail fences, fence posts. Bodark is a bodacious tree. It's I think it's the hardest hardwood that we have. It's what the Europeans used to come over here, and it was very sought after because they could make their long bows. That's why it's called bodark. Actually, we spell it B-O-D-A-R-K, but it's actually B-O-I-S apostrophe day apostrophe A-R-C, something like that. The bow of the arc, made for, used for archery bows because it's so hard but yet resilient. It makes a good fence post, but it kind of grows crookedy. And then a walnut makes a good fence post because it's rot resistant, the heartwood anyway. But, it's just so valuable for so many other things, fine furniture or nice things, that you kind of don't want to waste it on a fence post. But it does make a good one. Also, catalpa and mulberry make good fence posts as well. So that's one reason this tree lasted so long, is that it is cedar. The second reason that this fence post lasted so long in the ground is that it had a lot of heartwood in it. Probably the original post would have been probably about that big, because all that you see here is the heart. This part of the sapwood underground probably rotted within a couple of years. The sapwood up above probably took it a lot longer, maybe 10, 12, or maybe even longer years to rot off. So what you're looking at is the heartwood. And let me tell you, this part right here, it looks like I could just bust it off by hitting it, but you hear that? That thing is still solid. There is no way I could break that skinny part off with my hands. This thing is almost like metal. It's still got a lot of life just in this little skinny heart part that's upside down. So that's one reason it lasted so long, is so much heartwood. If you are in the process of making poles for your pole barn or fence post. If it's a fence post and you got a big tree, you want to, as we said, split it down so that, and the more you split it and quarter it and eighth it or whatever, the more heartwood and the less sapwood you have on it, which will make for a good post. If it's a pole that you're setting in the ground for a corner post or for a pole barn, and it probably has a tree that big that you'd use for a pole, probably has about that much sapwood all around the edge. A lot of times I'll take an axe and just chop that off because it's going to rot within 2 years anyway, and that way you'll have a better set post when you go to set it in the ground. Another thing to note is you don't want to use trees that are very small diameter for fence posts, because the smaller the diameter is, the less sapwood you've got in there, and the sooner that tree will not survive, especially as long as this one did. So the first reason this post lasted so long, it's cedar. It's a good rot resistant, insect resistant, ground contact species of tree to use. The second reason is that it has a lot of sapwood on it. And the third reason that this fence post lasted so long is that no doubt it was set properly when it was back however many years ago when it was set. And to set a pole or a post properly, the main point is that you don't want any air pockets. And to get rid of the air pockets, you need to go very slowly. When you're setting a post, dig your hole. Fence post, I go about 2.5 feet. Pole barn poles, maybe 3 feet. Really depends on what area you're living in, how far north you live. You want to be well below that frost line. We have a relatively shallow frost line here, so we can get away with a little bit more. So you want to dig your hole, you set your post in or your fence post in, and you add a little bit of dirt at a time. The dirt that you took out, you add a little bit of a time, maybe a shovelful or two, and then you tamp another shovelful, and then you tamp with an iron tamp. I like to use, here's a big one right here, a really big one. This one's made out of a very, very thick buggy axle. It's got a pointy end for prying up rocks or whatever in your hole, but then I use this flat end when I'm tamping the hole, and make sure the post, is where you want it, vertical or whatever, and then you just keep very slowly adding shovelfuls of dirt at a time, tamp, a couple more dirt, tamp, and back and forth until you have the whole filled. You just want to get all those air pockets out. That is so important to protect against rot, because the less air pockets you have down there, the less water that can seep near the post, and you've got a firm, solid set post. And that's why this one survived on my farm for so long. Another thing, I really don't like using concrete mix when I'm setting a post, especially when I'm using natural trees for fence posts and poles. I feel like the concrete holds the moisture there, it stays wet, stays moist under the ground, and chances are it'll break off at concrete level or ground level at some point. Especially when I'm using natural trees for fence posts, I shy away from using. The only time I'd use concrete is if I'm in a jam or I can't get the hole deep enough, or if I've dug a hole in a bog and there's no way around it, I might use concrete to set the pole in. But I try to stay away from it because it's just not conducive to this old-fashioned way of setting fence posts. So that's just about it. I wanted to show you the oldest fence post on my farm. I don't know where. I need to keep this somewhere. I wish I had a museum. People would wonder why you got a big stick in there. Anyway, I need to keep this somewhere just for the sake of it. Oldest fence post on my farm. If you'd like to add to the discussion about fence post, how to set poles and posts, leave it in the comment section below. Maybe you got a question, leave that below. Also, you might enjoy seeing my video on how to use trees for poles, for pole barn poles, or for fence posts. There's a lot more detail about how to set the post. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. I'll have a link at the end and in the description below. For now, I'm Paul Mack, and I'll talk at you later.